there would be kilos of cocaine on the table and garbage bags full of marijuana. So I put out all this music I made for these demos independently, and I had to be this persona of this person. Gets me into a kill or be killed situation, and I'm just like, how did I get here? And he looks at me, and his face is just staring. He's looking at me. Wow. With such pain and hysteria in his eyes. And he's saying, she's gone, son, she's gone. I can't, I'm screaming and hollering, and so many people were grabbing me, trying to pull me away from her. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry too.
Judaism was a temptation for me. Yeah, realize that? Like, I'm stuck in this environment, but I'm like, man, there's something about this, authentic thing over here that I really wanted.
Welcome to No Reservations, the most exclusive table in the world, where nothing is off limits. Each week, against the backdrop of the Western Wall, where heaven and earth meet, we invite a guest who has made big, bold, beautiful, life-changing choices and is finally ready to talk about why. And today, we're sitting down with a man whose life is a testament to the power of transformation. A man whose journey proves that no matter where you start, you can rewrite your ending. His name is Nissim Black. His career started as a rapper who dominated the underground hip-hop scene. An artist who had MTV on speed dial and record labels knocking down his door. But what you don't know is what happened next. Because Nissim's story isn't just about success. It's about what happens when you realize fame, fortune, and record deals still leave you searching. Born into a world of complexity and contradiction. Raised by a mother who was a pioneer in the rap world, a social butterfly, and a rebel with a beautiful spirit who privately battled addiction. Nissim grew up in a house that served fried chicken with a side of cocaine, as it was Grand Central Station for drug trafficking and family gatherings, where creativity lived alongside chaos, where survival meant learning to see beyond what was right in front of you. At 13, he found faith through a Christian organization. At 19, he found his soulmate. And somewhere in between losing his mother and searching for his own path, he found something extraordinary, a truth that wouldn't let him go. Judaism. He walked away from the record deal, from the HBO contract, from the biographical Broadway musical, from the fame, from it all, from everything he'd built. Today, Nissim Black is one of the most influential voices in Jewish music, and a bridge between worlds that rarely meet. And in the aftermath of October 7th, he's a bold, courageous voice for Israel and the Jewish people. His journey will definitely inspire you and remind you that your past doesn't define your future. Your choices do. Today at No Reservations, we are welcoming a man transformed, a man whose story shows us that when you follow truth, miracles unfold. And if this conversation moves you, sparks something inside of you, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It helps us grow this beautiful community and bring stories like Nissim's to the world. This is No Reservations. This is Nissim Black. Hey, Nissim Black, welcome to No Reservations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is a great reservation, actually. This is great accommodations. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
What do you say about the set? I mean, let's just get real. You were talking so good before the all the good stuff happens before the cameras roll, by the way.
This is unreal, actually. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I would do. Like, if I woke up every day to this, I already told my wife, listen, the only way I would move back to Yerushalayim is if we lived over here in the old city. Yeah. Like, we're not going to do Yerushalayim just for the sake of anything being called Yerushalayim. This is Yerushalayim. So this is beautiful.
I'm a tea girl. I drink about 5 cups of green tea a day.
Really?
Yes, I love it. I heard that it's like good, and it also helps speed the metabolism.
Really?
So that's how I got into it. That's really, to be honest.
I'm always looking for things to speed my metabolism.
You're on the stage a lot. Do you care about what you look like? Because you just mentioned to me, like, like you're down with speeding up the metabolism. Like how much does that affect someone who's on stage all the time?
It affects me a lot. Like, I'm going on tour, so like. Yeah, I start doing cardio. I know, and then I have to start. It's not so much even the look; it's just really being healthy overall. The older I get, I start to realize, like, listen, the reason why you feel like a slop It's because you ate like a slob most of your life, and fast food and all that, especially when you come from secular background for me, right? Like, oh my goodness, fast food is the real deal. So
I love anything greasy, like anything fried, just calls my name.
Yeah.
You know, like I hear it.
My mother used to cook a lot. I'm telling you, we would have so many people at my house. And now the only thing is, you know, the type of environment that I grew up in, we weren't eating dinner until about 12 o'clock at night, but still was a lot of people at my house. My mother's fried chicken and back then I could eat fried chicken and macaroni and cheese again. So
right. You can eat one before now and one after.
One after. But my mother, she was a very, very good cook, but she cooked late. So I grew up like eating a lot of greasy food. So, but the thing is, what I realized, it takes a toll on the body after a while. You don't realize why you're tired. And so I had started keto a while back. Okay. And it was tough for me. It wasn't until I got extremely uncomfortable. I got very uncomfortable. Like I was I was so uncomfortable. I was afraid to be in my own skin. I'm gonna walk around. I moved to Israel. I put on 50 pounds. Walking. And I realized, I said, how is it that I put on so much weight? And all I'm doing is I'm walking all day long. I didn't have a car. I'm walking all throughout Jerusalem. And then I realized after a while, I'm walking, but I'm going from one co-fix to the next co-fix to the next co-fix.
It's essentially like $1 for a Danish, and you could just totally.
Especially for me, because I came from Seattle. There's not a lot of kosher restaurants or food. So for me, this was like almost too much. And so for me, I got very subconscious about, like, I really started to feel so uncomfortable. And I went to the doctor, and he said, listen, you get a surgery, or you're going to go talk to this nutritionist. Right. So I said, I'll go for the nutritionist. The path of least
resistance first. Let's have a little conversation.
Exactly. So I went, and I'll say it this way. He scared the living daylights out of me. Okay. And after that, I never ate the same. Right. Wow. I went back on tour. And there's nothing worse. And like I told you, I don't like staying in hotels. Right. I like staying with families. Right. Now, the flip side of that, telling a Jewish woman you're not going to eat her food.
I was going to say, because she feels like God is working through her hands. So you can tell if God didn't make it, I can't eat it. She'd be like, honey, like she's got a spiritual energy that she's putting into that food.
Impossible. Yeah. I tried at the first 3 or 4 places that I stayed at, and it was just sort of like, listen, okay, just feed me. It's okay. Right. I'm on tour, and I'm, you know.
Like, oh, come on, your skin and bones, eat, you know.
So it's this thing of fluctuating, going up and down.
But you mentioned the family you come from. You mentioned your mom's fried chicken. I want to hear about your mom.
My mom. Oh, wow. That's a very good question. So my mother was, you know, even when she was young, she was always I used to call her, she was a social butterfly. Okay. My mother loved to be in the center of attention. And both my parents were rappers. So they actually pioneered hip hop in Seattle. So they started in the early 80s. So my mother was a rapper and my father was a rapper.
Even in the 80s, by the way, for a woman, not as common. Like women came on to see.
She may have been the first female rapper, to be honest. And so they started about 80, 81. And so she was, my mother though, she was like she was like the Rebbe of the family, right? You know,
which is like the grand rabbi.
She was like the grand rabbi of the family. Everybody would call her all the time whenever they had conversations or something that was going on in their life. And so my mother, one night, she I think it was after she was pregnant with my sister. Sister was born around 1994, so she had some complications with that, so they put her on pain medication. So from that, she got addicted.
That's what I wanted to know, where it started.
Yeah,
because
that's where it started.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's where it started.
So painful.
They prescribed her pain medication for it. I think she may have had to have a C-section. I was a natural birth. My sister wasn't, and from that, she naturally got, addicted to it. So for many years she battled it, but I didn't notice it till I got older because that was my mom. So I didn't really, there was so much. My house was like a hot box. You walk in, Wow. I mean, I literally would get off the bus. There would be kilos of cocaine on the table and garbage bags full of marijuana. We were battle ran by the FBI when I was 8. So most of my uncles and people that were around were heavily involved in gangs and drugs and all that. And my house was like the house. It was the center house for everything.
And did you know that? Like you understood what was going on?
I didn't understand it. I was used to it. That was life for me. So there was in a moment of where I felt, once you grow up with something like that, you don't start thinking like, oh, this is not normal, right? For me, that was my normal.
Yeah.
So when I got older and I started to realize that my mother's addiction was an addiction, that only happened because I started to build relationships outside the house.
Interesting.
That was the best thing for me, honestly, or else I don't think I would have ever, which actually happened in Christianity. There was a hip hop program I was invited to. And when I went there, they didn't initially speak to me about God, but it was a Christian organization, the Union Gospel Mission. And they had all these different initiatives to get kids off of the streets, in the urban community. So I started going there, built really good relationships. And from me being in those environments, what I found more effective was by the time I was that teenager.
How old were you?
I was 13 when I started going.
Right.
I was 13 years old when I started going. And so, although I was still busy with the gangs and running around, I was a product of my environment.
Right.
The thing for me was that for whatever reason during that time period, instead of taking people that had come from the neighborhood, it was a lot of like white suburban kids who had a heart, wanted to help in the inner city, and that was the staff.
Right.
And it was so helpful for me because I got to see a different life. You understand? When you start to look and say, wow, hold on, there's something beyond the way that I've grown up and the way that I've known the world. So for me, that was very crucial. And it wasn't until then and being in those environments that I realized, hold on, wait, my house is messed up.
There's something other than this.
There's something other than this.
Right. There's another way to live.
There's another way to live. And so by that time, fast forward a little bit, I realized that my mother...
Before we fast forward, can we just go a little deeper?
Yeah, no problem.
And just say, like, I'm hearing a lot of the facts of, like, what it was like, where you went, what you did, that the house was the center for, central operations for major, drug dealing operations. But, like, what did you feel like growing up? Like, were you ever scared with that stuff around you? Were you ever scared by the gang life? Like, as a young child, like, how did you go to sleep at night? Like, you were able to sleep? Like,
we had fear a lot. We lived with fear because, and what I mean by that is that because you grew up in that type of environment, you naturally are afraid of police.
Right.
You're naturally afraid of, other gangs or shootouts. When I was 5 and I watched my dad come home, him and a few friends, they left. One was missing and they had bullets all in their legs and whatever. They had got into a shootout and his really, really close friend had died and passed away in the shootout. And like that startles you as a kid, like when you see that, and then that coupled with watching Boys in the Hood and Minister Society, all the movies that came out, like, so you that in the music, the Tupac and Biggie and everything. So once you're like in the environment, you are cocooned in a world of dysfunction, violence, gangs. And so for me, if you're asking me how I felt like this was my life. I didn't feel any different. Now, the only thing I would say that was different about me, and I don't know where it came from, I was a very spiritually intuitive kid. For what reason, I don't know.
Do they talk about God in your house?
If people got drunk or high enough, God usually came up. You know what I mean? I think people don't get to the soul sometimes until they're sedated. If you live in a world where you never get to those places, sometimes it takes substance to bring it out. But usually, no. I just, whenever the topics did come up, I was very attracted to them. So my grandfather, rest his soul, he was a Sunni Muslim. He taught me Islam, but before he came home, he spent most of his life in prison. He had sent me...
Did he find God and Islam in prison?
I think he found Islam in prison. He grew up originally Christian from Chicago, Southside Chicago. Most people that come from Black community, they find Black Islam. They would have found Farrakhan Islam, like a Nation of Islam. Yeah. But he went Sunni, right? He taught himself Arabic, and Quran, knew how to read in Arabic, everything. And so he couldn't send me, they used to send for Christmas, like presents from the prison. There was organizations that would help do that. Wow. So he wanted to send me something, but he didn't want to send me anything like Christian, but he wanted to send me something meaningful. Yeah. So he sent me a DVD, which is a movie of the prayer of Jabez in Hebrew, It's a beautiful prayer in the Book of Chronicles about enlarging the territory and praying to God. And it was a documentary. It was done, I'm sure, by a Christian organization, but it wasn't a Christian movie. It was specifically dealing with this one beautiful prayer in the Old Testament, right? And this is what he sent me. And I remember I would sit down as a kid, I would watch it over and over and over and over again. And then once I finally got a Bible, I don't know where I found a Bible. It was like in the back of like the furnace room or something like that. I found one, dusted it off, and I went looking until I could find this prayer. And I used to pray.
I think it's so interesting that your Christian born, turned Muslim grandfather in prison sends you something from the Old Testament, which is the Torah.
Isn't that crazy? Listen, the
Like
whole
signs
thing,
everywhere, you know?
the whole thing is a setup. I'm going to tell you why the whole thing is a setup. So that coupled with the fact that I lived in the highest, at the time he sent me this, right? The neighborhood that I was in elementary school, Graham Hill Elementary School, and my routes said take like a shortcut through a shul parking lot. A synagogue parking lot.
Wow.
So I grew up.
And then like not that many Jews in Seattle. There's a community, but it's not like the center. It's not here in New York.
The community. Yeah. I lived right there inside the community in Seward Park.
Because if you tell me that story like you live in Brooklyn, okay, makes sense. You might cut through a synagogue, but interesting.
Right. But in Seattle, the story is wild. We'll go through it. But so I had that prayer. I grew up there, and I'm just, all this is retrospect, and I'm seeing like wow, God, you were doing this for a long time.
You're planting the seeds.
Yeah, planting the seeds, exactly. And so I fell in love with prayer from that.
Wow. Oh.
And this is so wild. I'm so happy you're asking me this, because like this is like therapeutic for me.
Good.
I have to really think about
and
these
this is
things.
A place to just we say no reservations, like put it all on the table.
I'm putting it all out. I'm putting it all out. And so that really explains, even to me now, thinking of how I fell in love with prayer, because that was really the first introduction really to religion at all. Was that, right? Even I was very, like I said, spiritually intuitive. When any person would talk about God, my ear was like to it. I was always like a believer. I never had this like disbelief or non-belief thing. So I didn't struggle with that. And so that, that was the home environment. I was the kid that got into stuff only because I had bad influences around me. I really was. I can honestly say about myself that I wouldn't say about everybody, but I would say about myself. I was a really good kid. I had good intentions. I was a soft-hearted person, very soft-hearted. But I also realized the importance of being a part of something bigger than yourself to protect yourself.
Right.
That's how the gang mentality sort of works. And so I had cousins that, sometimes my parents were now coming from where I came from. Now I'm looking back, and I can't even believe that my parents cared, not because they were bad people, just because it's a part of the environment, but they did care so much that I had family members that they were like, you can't go around him for at least another 2 months, right? Because they recognized that I was good. I wasn't like what was going on in my neighborhood. I was always soft-hearted.
Do you think they saw like potential in you for something greater, or they were trying to protect you? Yeah.
You know what? You know how I know? Years later, I called my cousin. I don't know. I usually talk to my family when, unfortunately, we lost somebody in the family. So I haven't talked to them in years. And this cousin said to me, I spoke to her recently also, but she said to me, it had been years since I talked to her. She says, it doesn't surprise me that you live the way that you live, that you've become who you become. Says you were always different. That's what she told me that. And what's so interesting to me is that I was doing what everybody else was doing.
Right.
I felt very different.
Right.
I felt very different. I felt like I was acting for most of my life.
So you were wearing the clothes and going through the motions.
Going through the motions, but not everything else. But I always felt like this ain't me.
And your parents saw it, like they knew
my parents saw, my mother for sure saw it. She for sure saw it.
And did they want something better for you? Or?
Yeah, they always wanted. I grew up in a house where don't do what I do. Right, do as I say. Do as I say, but not as I do.
Don't we all wish that for our kids? And by the way, we know that it's most important to model the behavior, but we are all so flawed, and we are all working on ourselves. God, go through, and we want it. We're saying the things that we want, not just for ourselves, for our kids. I once spoke to a Rebbitzin, a wonderful female educator, and where I was learning with her books on education and like through a Jewish and a Torah lens, through Jewish wisdom. And she said the things that we see in our kids, it's actually exactly whatever bothers us about them, or we think that they need to work on, or we think that they need help in. It's a mirror.
Right.
It's actually exactly the thing that we need to work on, and work on it yourself first, and then model that behavior, and that will help your kids too.
That's so interesting. I feel the exact same way. I've also heard a teaching, very similar teaching. But one thing that I would even add to this
Please do.
is that what I've noticed personally is that when God really wants to yell at you, it's usually the one that looks the most like you.
Meaning, break that down.
The physical attributes. It's the kid that looks the most like you.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Isn't that the one
that you
like, you're like, what's wrong with that? And I like look at my husband like, he's your twin, you know, and he says the same to me. That's you. One kid, I'm like, he's exactly
the one you can never deny.
No.
That's the one that usually I see myself in the most. Like but usually all the things I want to fix.
That's
right?
like, he's so selfish. Or she. I'm not calling out anyone because I got to think of it. And that's like, wait, that's me. Like that's exactly. Totally.
So that's
it really is a mirror. So you're saying it's a mirror.
mirror.
So you're in high school, you're going to like Bible classes, you're Christian, you meet your beautiful wife, who's got a great name, by the way. And it's like, tell me how you meet her. I mean, I know how. Tell everyone else. Okay. Because it's a goodie.
So I started in high school, and I had this major transformation coming from my middle school years. My middle school years, I was getting in trouble, running with gangs, all this other stuff. And then I get expelled from the Seattle school district. A few weeks later, I'm at this program because I love hip hop music. Right. And I start going to this Christian organization, and I'm meeting these new people, and this becomes my environment or whatever. So crucial. I go to camp with them. And that camp, I have this, Christian, transformation. I remember coming back, and I got a letter from the school district allowing me to finish that last year. That was my 7th grade, my 8th grade. So the next year, I think it was my 10th grade year of high school, I remember coming in. It was maybe closer to the end of that school year. And I was walking down the hall, and then all of a sudden, it was like the whole entire world just stopped. Nothing happened. I wasn't doing anything. I was just coming back. I think I grabbed lunch off campus, and I was walking in the hall, and I started to feel inside of my body something screaming, saying, "You don't belong here." And I'm looking at all my friends or whatever, and I kept feeling, wow, I don't belong here. Something out of place. And I felt as if I knew something that nobody else knew, but I didn't know what it was.
Right.
I just really felt this very, very strong feeling of out of place, but it was so spiritual. It was heavy. This feeling stops, and I go, whoa. I said, that was a God moment. I know what that was. So that forced me to go back to this Christian organization, and I got involved in everything. And I told my mentor that was there, and he was just like, I don't know, but you should probably join this Bible study, this, whatever. Right. It got me back focused spiritually.
Okay.
So that was towards the end of that school year. I was already starting football practice. And one day my friend calls me and he says, listen, I'm coming over. I want the family to meet he was like my brother. Yeah. And he said, well, family meet my new girlfriend. So he wants to bring his new girlfriend, and it was his birthday. Okay. So the custom is, let me say the minhag, the custom is on the birthday is to go and collect money, from wherever, you go. My house was the drug house. So everybody was coming, he knew he was going to get some money at my house, and he'd be able to introduce my mother to his new girlfriend. Well, the girlfriend had a younger sister.
Wow.
So she comes along with him, and as he's making his way through the house or whatever, it's just me and her. So we're left. They had one other friend, but she was on the phone the whole entire time. And so I was left to talk to this, beautiful young lady. And we talked, and we both were in a good place, I would say, at least, spiritually. She was a part of a Bible study group. I was a part of, the organization.
Something in common.
Had something in common. Yeah. So most of our conversation really was about God and the Bible.
So you guys just started it off right
and we
away.
Just started talking. We just start talking or whatever. And to give you the real part, you may hear something different from my wife, but the real truth of what happened afterwards, she couldn't stop thinking about me after that.
Yeah.
And so,
ain't that the truth? I'm sure.
And because she couldn't stop thinking about me,
you had to probably get a phone number.
I had to go and find her.
You knew it. You knew it. So you were trying to help her out.
It was something instinctive. And so meeting her was really I tell her all the time, I probably don't tell her enough, but I tell her quite often.
You don't tell her enough. I'm letting you know.
I show you.
Yeah.
That was the best gift I ever had. I got from God ever was meeting my wife and starting the day. She brought out that me I wanted to be, that I was trapped by my environment. Mm-hmm. I got to be that with her.
Wow.
Right? You have to fight through that confusion of the, really it's a personality thing that you're dealing with yourself. Like, am I this guy that everybody thinks I'm supposed to be because I came from this family and this environment and this type of everything? Or am I really this person who is soft-hearted that, wants to be close to God, and I want to live a different type of life? I've seen different now, right? And so she brought that out of me, and we ended up going to the journey through Christianity.
And so, okay, so you were a Muslim inspired by your grandfather. Mm-hmm. Then you're a Christian with your girlfriend, and then now you're both Jewish, living in Israel with your stunning family, with beautiful children, together. Mm-hmm. So where is that
next part of the journey?
You were both so into it. Like, how does a beautiful love that blossoms around Christianity, a love of God together, and a love of each other, turn into this love of Judaism?
So interesting. So what happens first is we're now, how old were we? I think we were 20 years old or something like that. Yeah, I think I was around 19. Getting back, and this is how we could cover both parts of those stories, actually, was that I ended up losing my mother.
I was going to say, was it before it?
Yeah,
okay,
this
so
was
we'll
right.
pause for 1 second, because you can't just say that
okay.
without getting into that story. We're having 800 conversations at once.
So I was in the studio late one night, and I noticed that every time I went upstairs, because I had a studio in my basement, that my mother was dozing off from the narcotics. She was addicted to narcotics. So it was more than any normal night. I was used to it because that was a part of my life, right? Seeing her like that. But this was much more than usual. And she was only home for a couple of weeks. She had been in treatment, and unfortunately they kicked her out because she was addicted to narcotics. That wasn't such a popular thing at that time. So they didn't really take her thing serious. So she had always told me they're so strict with me because they think I shouldn't be here, right? Which is unfortunate. Because I don't know how many of those women actually lived for many years afterwards, and my mother didn't. So anyway, I noticed that she was dozing off a lot, and one time before I went down the stairs, my phone was ringing, and I answered, and it was my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I was talking to her, and I just opened up to her how frustrated I was about it, and I literally said the words to her, I feel like one day she's not gonna wake up. That morning, my mother didn't wake up. I was in the studio recording, and my dad and my sister, because after I put my mother to sleep in my bed, because to go up another
like you
stairs.
Carried her to sleep?
I carried her. I woke her up, and I said, "Mom, it's enough. It's enough." And I took her into my room, and she was crying, which made me cry.
Totally, I'm crying too.
And I kissed her, and I put her in my bed, and then I went to my sister's room. I woke her up, my sister, and I said, "Go sleep in my bed with Mom. I want you to sleep in the bed with Mom," which I feel horrible about. And I went down to the studio. But before I went down, I had this phone call with my wife, and I said, "You know what? I feel like one day she's not going to wake up." And I go down, I'm in the studio, and I'm recording. And a few hours later, I hear my dad's rushing down the stairs, and he looks at me, and his face is just staring. He's looking at me. Wow. With such pain and hysteria in his eyes. And he's saying, "She's gone, son. She's gone. She's gone." And I immediately just start shaking, and my sister's crying. I feel horrible. I put her in the bed with her. And then so I run up the stairs, and because I can't accept that yet. It's my mom. I can't accept it. So I go into my room, and then I start shaking her. And she was face down. And so as I'm shaking her, and her body's so cold, I can't, I'm screaming and hollering, and so many people were grabbing me, trying to pull me away from her. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry too.
And it was, I remember that pain that day, and I said, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And that's usually how I think, sometimes we can measure who we are. I didn't turn to anger. And when I see what I hurt, and when I get into such a deep hurt like that, my instant reaction is submission. And I don't know why, but there was a large part of me that surrendered to God, and I was like, you win. Because sometimes we think we control the world, and I think that I thought that if I controlled the world, then my mother would still be here, right? So I don't know where that maybe I had built it up from being 15, 16 and locking myself in my room and praying to God. I don't know, I gravitated to that, obviously, because probably from that disc I had when I was a kid, but I gravitated naturally towards prayer. So in this period of my life, I was, sort of separated from that because I was trying to work on my music career. So losing my mother was almost like, wow, it was like the world stopped that day. But I couldn't sleep at home.
Can I say, I think it's a sign of a very developed person, spiritually and emotionally, that you submit. Because anger is a natural reaction. I still get that. I can't say I'm as developed and my character traits are not as refined as yours, because when your first reaction is anger, it's almost like saying that you don't believe that there's a bigger plan and that everything is for the good, and you're still trying to fight it.
Right. You're still trying to fight it. Right.
So I feel like to be at that age and to be so spiritually developed and emotionally developed, I think it's a good sign.
Yeah, thank you. So it was, thank God that at this point that I had already had my wife at this point. So she came to sort of assume that role really of my mother. She came, moved in with us, helped us out and cleaned up and became and so she really was that void. For the first, I would say, 3-4 months, I was going out, staying out at her and my mother-in-law's house. And, she gave me a nice pilot on the couch. But I stayed out there because I couldn't sleep in my bed after that. There's no way I could sleep on my bed after that. So I think that was the first thing that put me in that submissive state to where I felt like, okay, you can live your life, but this ain't going to be forever. I felt like I had a debt. You know what I mean? I felt like I owed God something.
Oh, because I was going to say, usually the opposite. When something's taken from you, you're like, God owes me.
He owes me. No. I felt like I didn't feel that way. I felt like I owed God something, and I knew what it was like to live within the realms of Christianity. I knew how to live a life that was, in order with what I knew to be true. So I felt always, so many people had spoken to me and whatever, and I guess maybe I just believed them. You have a calling on your life. You're gonna, you're gonna do great things for God's kingdom and blah blah blah. And I felt this. So at some point, just going back when I'm thinking about this, when I was 17 years old, I remember I had a dream, and that dream was very powerful. I came to the dream much later. I remembered it later, but I remembered it so vividly. And I was speaking somewhere. I was doing an interview with some lady. I don't know. I'm not being honest. I'm being honest. Actually, in the dream, and I was somewhere well on in my career in music or whatever. But I was speaking, and I was on this video, this interview, and I was speaking about God, and there were people walking in the streets watching this interview, and I felt as if I was like an ambassador, for God in this thing. And I had a black suit on. Now, mind you, I was nowhere near Jewish or nothing like this. I was a teenager, and I had this dream. And I remember when I spoke and I was talking about God, there was so much fire inside of me at the time I spoke it that I felt this spiritual energy. And it was so strong that I remember waking up from that dream, and I sat on the other side of my bed, and I started crying, and I was uncontrollably crying. I just couldn't stop crying when I had this dream. So I had these moments from that when I was in the youth ministry and other people saying like, listen, God's really got something for you or whatever. So maybe they
People
made me
recognized
feel
you
that,
in every arena.
yeah, so maybe they had this feeling of, as a high school, I had more than half of the high school going to all the groups. I was the poster child for this,
Right,
for this
course.
ministry group. So there was, at this time, there was like something inside of me. And maybe it was all those people telling me that I believed it, that I felt like eventually God's going to be like, hey, you know what I'm saying?
Knocking at your door.
Knocking at my door. So you better figure it out fast. So I always felt like I was playing this like hard to get thing with him. And so fast forwarding a little bit, just a little bit, year and a half or so goes by, and me and my wife now have, moved. We got our own apartment, and we're going to get married. We don't know when we're going to get married, but eventually we're going to get married. So
It's understood.
It's understood. And then so I ended up around this time, I was releasing music, and I had an album that it did very well. And so, while I was working on the next one, there was another artist that I was helping work on his album. But because mine's it did so well, it was still like buzzing a lot. And there was another artist who wanted to get himself out there. So he made this diss track on me. That one you don't have to translate.
Okay, right. Totally.
And what happened was he made this song. It went a little viral. It didn't go as viral probably as he intended, but it went a little viral. And what would have helped it was what he wanted was that I would have responded to him.
Right.
And that would have created this whole thing in the streets and whatever. And so I was going to give him his wishes from a very heavy place of pride. And what happened was a friend of mine, he was like there when I was at the studio, and he like came up with the brilliant idea of this, like, let's just go beat him up, man. Like, like that's gonna do the trick.
Forget settling it with songs, just like lay down.
And unfortunately, we went with his plan. That ended up getting into a super stupid fight.
Hey, that's why it's so important to be with the right crowd. Or say to all the kids watching.
Environment is everything. Yeah. And what's tough about it, like even the guy who really initiated that, such a good guy, really internally. Right. But environment. It's each one, when we get together, when the multitude gets together to do the wrong thing, no person knows who he really is at that point. So this ends up turning into from a street fight to a friend of mine trying to kill this person. They get into
It's crazy how quick things escalate, by the way.
Fast.
Especially like in group dynamics like that.
Yeah, it was very, very quick. I was already gone from the scene. I'd already fought. I had left. I got a call. Somebody told me what the situation was. Initially, they thought it was me. And I'm like, I couldn't even recognize. It didn't happen while I was there. But he went shooting, and it was at the club and the whole everything. And thank God he didn't hit anybody. It turned into like a street thing, and he's shooting as he goes down the street. And like, of course, the police swoop in. So I caught everything at the tail end of it. Yeah. By the time the police had him already surrounded and whatever. And I seen what happened. But now I have a major dilemma, because these guys, now they know who he is. They know who I am. That was like one of my closest friends. And so if now they need to finish their job, they're going to have to come after me because they think that I sent him to do that. So now I'm in a kill or be killed situation. And the reason why that happened, because I got offered this contract and they wanted gangster rap. And so I started making that against who I was as a Christian at that time, thinking that I was going to, get this massive deal and everything else. And I'm telling you, the way he did me, strung me along the whole entire time. And then it never ended up happening. So I put out all this music I made for these demos independently. And I had to be this persona of this person, gets me into a kill or be killed situation. And I'm just like, how did I get here? Right? Like, how did I, in it that fast? Like, I'm in this type of, and so the person that he had that issue with, the person that got in that fight or whatever, I was supposed to already not be that person many years ago. Yeah. Right? So that's why it was such a struggle for me at the time to deal with it. So my wife, who had no idea what was going on, she would have went crazy if she would have known. She just seen I was like walking and pacing back and forth in the house and whatever. And I always kept my gun private. She didn't really always know when I had it. So I'm like really afraid now that like this is the real thing. Anyway, I started praying, and after some time, and I was praying intensely, really, I realized who I was, and it was not that person. And so I got a phone call, and it was him. And so we talked it out. And after we got that, which was a miracle. I tell everybody to this day, that's such a miracle.
It's an open miracle.
Nobody ever calls.
He just calls?
So people knew that I was really always a peacemaker. I was able to get guys in the studio that had odds with each other and bring them together because of music. And my home being the way that it was, even though it was like my house was the house. So even when people had settled differences or whatever, I was like really... I could get people together from rival gangs and stuff like that. So I think that reputation preceded me. Yeah. And I think that he had some conversations as this went on, and they were just like, he didn't send him to do that. Right. It's like, I know these two guys, that guy's a hothead. He wouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's my theory. I don't know. So you really saved yourself with your previous good behavior. Right. And so we talked this out. We get off the phone. It was a tough conversation, I think, for both of us, because I don't think either one of us wanted that. Yeah. Right? I don't really take him either to be like, I think later on in life, he ended up becoming more and more gangster. But at that time, I really didn't take him for such a, person like that. But a lot of people who unfortunately lose their life in that world are guys that are not 100%, right. But it's like, now's my moment to show and prove that I'm really serious. Of course. And so we get off the phone, and now the coast is clear. So I don't know what I'm going back to. Now, I just start praying every day. I was praying, walking back and forth, and this is now me and my wife to be, and we're already engaged at this point. So I'm walking, man. She has no idea, but she's enjoying the fact that I'm becoming more and more spiritual. She has no idea what happened, what just made me spiritual, right? And so I pick up my Bible and start reading it, and I go online and I get super fascinated. I start finding out, and I think the thing that brought me into Judaism was when I started to find out about the holidays. All right. So the first thing for me is like, holidays are time everybody gets together. We know how to party. And all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
but it was the fact that, like, when I learned that Christmas and Easter wasn't biblically based, right? Not even in the Christian Bible. So that's what really started it. I don't know what, I came across some Zeitgeist Refuted documentary or something like that. And that's what led me on this journey, which made me start looking at the Bible differently. And this led me down this rabbit hole of like, well, no, we should, this Messianic, I think, rabbit hole of like, I should understand this from Hebraic. If Jesus was Jewish, then I should have, then if he was Jewish. And so that led me into like wanting to find out about the origins of the church. And I started to go into like the church fathers, a lot of the apocryphal books. And my wife now sees me growing and becoming more spiritual, and she's excited about it. Sure. And finally, I'm like, I got to tell her like all this new stuff I learned, Wow. And I'm thinking about her like, so it's different from me and my wife. Even as I am today, I'm not that like, outside of Judaism, the longest I was ever in any religion was Christianity, right? So what most people do when they convert from one religion to the next, they usually have some animosity towards the religion that they grew up in, right? And I think one of the reasons I didn't really have that was because I was a convert to every religion I went to. I didn't grow up in Christianity. So for me, it was the hardest thing as I'm learning all these things. I'm like, how do I tell my wife all these things I learned? Now, I haven't broken away 100%. I just at least know a lot of the things that I thought were biblically based are not. They have no basis inside the Bible. So I was a truth seeker at that point. I guess I was most of my life. But so now I'm ready to tell her, and she's just like, what is he about to tell me? Right? At this point, like, what do you do? You sit her down, you take her out for sushi. How do you do? I tell her finally one day, sit her down on the couch. I'm like, listen, I don't want to do Christmas or Easter and all this other stuff. And she's just like, I'm out of here. Just like, I'm like, what you hear? But are you becoming a Muslim? Right. Like, what are you doing? But she's like, she didn't know how to like, handle it. So she was very distant, for a time period, a few weeks, whatever. I think it wasn't that long, but it was like, I didn't know, like, man, what's going to happen? Like, what's going to be? And all the while, you wait till after you tried not to tell her that? Yeah, and the month we also, I think we just had our baby. My Maya was just born, and so she's like, it was postpartum. It was like, dude, what are you? I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So during this time of her like being very distant or whatever, she's like going behind me, like reading all my notes. I was very thorough at all the notes. All the scriptures on my Bibles were highlighted, all the different ones or whatever.
So she's investigating.
And so she's
a
like
little what you're busy with.
investigating. She's checking all my history on YouTube, and she's like, and one day she comes to me, she's like, listen, I went through everything, and I feel like we've been lied to. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, I feel like I've been lied to my whole life. How come God didn't tell us all this stuff? How come I grew up the way that I grew up? And she was like angry. I was like, what you angry about? Like, I was so happy to start finding out stuff. So we felt like she's like, okay, so talk. So I started teaching her everything that I know. And we really like together went on this journey. Now, my brother and sister-in-law were very close to us. That was the other couple we were like the closest to. Her and her sister, like Irish twins, they're like 10 months apart. So they're like joined together at the hip. So they were always by us or whatever. But as we start growing more, my wife's like sharing with her sister. And since they grew up together, it's like that was the easy way in. Now, my brother-in-law, he was like, he didn't grow up with anything. Like he was totally not religious, didn't know anything about, so for him, it was like, he was like the last person. He's a big tzaddik today, but he was like the last, he was just like
a big righteous man.
A big righteous man. He was a very righteous person now today. But back then he was just like, you guys are tripping, and then slowly but surely he comes in. So now it's 4 crazy people, right? Right. And I started, whatever I learned, I wanted to share. So I started doing, a Bible study group, and I naturally started to do it on Shabbat. We need a way to honor the Sabbath. I don't know how to honor the Sabbath. What do I do for the Sabbath? And so it said, don't work. So the first thing I decided, I told my wife, I said, so from here on out, I'm not doing any dishes on Saturday.
That's so interesting. So interesting.
I later on found out there was a way to do dishes, and I wasn't happy about it. But that was like the first thing I was like.
Was that why you're like, I'm in?
Yeah.
No dishes on Saturday.
No dishes on Saturday. It's a greasy pots,
totally.
And so I'm telling you, we had absolutely no clue. So what I started to do was we started because I was working as a facility coordinator, working on a property for a real estate company. And it was the same company that I lived in the complex. So I had the access to the cabana after hours when everything was closed or whatever. And so we started going over there, taking our food, and we would, play music, gossip, and we'd just sit around and we start talking. And it started growing, and more people started coming. And more people started coming. And it became like this Friday thing. And then, some of my cousins, our aunties or whatever. And then I started giving Bible studies every Friday night. I had no idea, and this for me, I'm honoring the Sabbath. I get to talk about God, and whatever the case is, my job finally started giving me Fridays and Saturdays off. So as this thing starts to grow, I'm like, all right, I really need more. So I ended up on Chabad.org. And I was going, slowly but surely. I was on Aish.com and Chabad.org. And Aish had another website called Jewish Pathways.
Yeah.
It's still around?
Back
Jewish
in the day, no, everything's on
So Pathways was like the resource, printing off everything, So what happened, what made me go to those websites was I ended up on Chabad.org, and they had a documentary about Shabbat. And there was about a 20-minute documentary. There was a Roar family. I remember seeing that at the beginning. I think they're from Miami that sponsored this video.
They're amazing.
Are they? I don't know them.
Can I just tell you?
I never met them.
Mr. Sammy Roar has given away, he should rest in peace and should be blessed, over $250 million.
Wow.
Yes. And really to help with education in the Jewish world and to bring back Jewish people.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful family of generations of philanthropists.
Really?
And I'm really dear friends with his granddaughter.
Wow, that's crazy. So you have to tell him the story. I don't know if they ever, I never met them.
Yeah.
I've said it a few different times, and people are like, do you know the Roar? I was like, no. It's like,
a philanthropic dynasty, and for them to know who they touched, because it's great to have a personal story.
It changed my life. I'm telling you, I watched this documentary. It's like, I think it was Shabbat, a day of rest, or Island of Time. I can't remember, something like that. And I watched this documentary, and halfway through, I'm crying like a baby. And I'm like, I need this. Like, I'm tearing up now thinking about it. Like, the impact that documentary, and I watched it over and over and over again. So anyway, now I'm super inspired. And now Bible study never looked the same. Right. I buy non-kosher challahs from the bakery. I didn't know they had to be kosher. It didn't matter to me, right? I found out the local grocery store actually sells them. I was asking somebody about it. I can't remember. And they're like, challah. Yeah, I know challah. You can buy challah bread at the store. So I went to get challah bread.
Or sometimes they call it holly bread.
Holly bread.
Yeah, I have a friend, and it's like so funny, yeah.
So I end up going to the store and I'm waiting, like, they're like, oh yeah, 20 minutes. And I'm just like, wow, I'm going to get real challah bread, Anyway, so I bring this back and I'm like, and I'm watching video games, like, we need a tablecloth. So I go back, I go buy tablecloths and I'm like, set this place beautiful with candles and all that. Nobody really knows, but everybody feels something different that day.
Yeah, of course.
And these became the beginning of Shabbat. And it was such a beautiful thing. Like, we just picked up innocently, not knowing anything. And eventually I found a Messianic congregation that wasn't far from where we lived. And the blessing about this particular place was that it was so traditional, in the sense it was much closer to traditional Judaism. Yeah. When you usually go to like a Messianic congregation, it's churchy, and they're like blow a shofar in the middle, and then they'll have a menorah there. But I ended up going to a Messianic, Jews for Jesus type place. And when I went there,
that was like
I thought that was Judy. I thought that was like, I didn't go there on purpose. I just was trying to find somebody else who was crazy enough to think that the Torah didn't change, that the Bible was what it was, and we're finding all this stuff out and we're doing it by ourselves. But I'm like, I'm teaching other people. I want to be taught. Yeah. So I ended up going to this place, and it was very interesting. I walk in and they're reading out of Art Scroll Sidurs.
Well, explain what
Art Scroll is a publication. Yeah. And they
with
have
English
Hebrew on one side, and they have the English translation on the other side, but they're going in Hebrew, and I'm like, what did I just walk into? I'm completely culture shocked. Beautiful, the cabinet, the Aron Kodesh of the Torah is there. Beautiful, with the painting of the kotel
and the Western Wall.
With the Western Wall. And I'm like, I come into this place and I felt so like, this is weird. I never been in a place like this before. And I almost thought like I walked into Orthodox synagogue, and I didn't really know. And then like after they read from the prophets, somebody got up and they read from the New Testament. I was like, okay, all right. So I'm like, okay, so at least I know something. And I was very cautious. I didn't know what I walked into. And so I started to learn there, but I'm like, man, I'm so far behind these people. I need to catch up. So that naturally led me to Chabad and Aish. And I'm on there like every day. And the more
I'm catching up there to be a better Messianic Jew.
And then that made me want to become Orthodox. Yeah. So like the more and more I start learning, then I start learning about Jewish law and halakha. And then we're like, okay, we need to kosher the kitchen. Like me and my wife was like, okay, we can't have, and it just at some point, I remember my wife coming up to me just like, what are we doing? Like, are we doing this? Are we not doing this? And at that point, I didn't know. So funny story. There was a Messianic conference. And at this point, I was sort of wrestling because I'd now come into contact with Orthodox Judaism. There's a Chabad Rabbi Farkash. And I started going to his classes on the east side and I was also going, and I told him, I said, listen, Rabbi, we are, we believe in Jesus, but we're trying to figure ourselves out. And he said, listen, as long as you're not preaching and stuff, you want to come learn, you could come.
Interesting.
So, which was very nice of him. And so we're going there and we're learning. And then, so now I'm like, man, I'm getting like the best. I had this major, Judaism was a temptation for me. Yeah, realize that? Like, I'm stuck like in this environment, but I'm like, man, there's something about this, authentic thing over here that I really wanted. And so I was going there. So the
authenticity is like pulling you.
It's pulling me. And so I'm going to this, I'm going there. And then finally they're having this, massive, Messianic conference. And for the first time ever, I'm telling you, they do it in Seattle. Of all places. You don't do nothing in Seattle. You don't put the Super Bowl in Seattle. You don't put the World Cup in Seattle. It rains.
I mean, it's just like Amazon, I guess.
Yeah, Amazon, Microsoft, other stuff. Any place where you want to work and be depressed, you could go there. So anyway, but you don't put events there. Right. So this is the first time only. And I don't know if they went back afterwards, but this was like the first time. And so whatever congregation that was affiliated with this, national conference, they are the host. So they were hosting at this hotel. And so this is a congregation I was a part of, but I got 1 foot in, 1 foot out because I'm like,
you already had
a taste of authentic Judaism. Yeah. And I really wanted that. And so I ended up, saying, I went for one meeting, and one of the meetings that they said, whatever you do, don't talk to the Orthodox rabbis that are going to be in the lobby. Don't say hi, don't say Shabbat Shalom, don't say, he said they're going to argue with you, the anti-missionaries, and they're just going to come. And so we decided we would go to the conference, but instead of going in, I went to go hang out with the rabbis. They told me not to.
Are you serious?
I said, I'm going to go ask all my questions. So it was Rabbi Michael Skoback from Jews from Judaism, who does a lot of different, anti-missionary
Jews
work.
for Judaism. So interesting.
Jews for Judaism.
Yeah.
And so I sat with him for 4 days, me and my brother-in-law, asking him every question. He knew the New Testament very well and different things like that. I had already come across Rabbi
So these are not
Singer.
missionaries. These are anti-missionaries.
And their job is to follow these conferences around and engage Jews in conversation and debate and show them the beauty of Judaism.
They're looking for the Jews.
They're looking for
to be
the
very
Jews.
Clear.
They're not
looking to convert anyone else. So when they found you, so why are you wasting my time?
It's interesting data. What happens? These guys are single-handedly probably the most responsible for people converting to Judaism because they're coming there for Jews, right? But who's interested all the time is these non-Jews is hey, why had this question, Rabbi? And that's usually what happens. But they're successful in both ways, but that's what their job is. And so, of course, it was less interest that we're coming to talk, but listen, I'm not letting them go. I have somebody here that's going to answer all my questions. I can't ask Rabbi Farkas. She's not, holding in Christianity, but this guy knows the New Testament very well. So let me talk to him. So I sat Rabbi Skoback. I started asking all my questions, and I'm for the first time, feeling so fulfilled and energized and wanting to really do this. And that was for me was okay, what do? I went back home from this conference. My wife was not with me, by the way.
You're with
On
your
her
brother-in-law.
own, she was doing all. So she comes to me and she says, I think we should convert. We should convert to Orthodox. I've been thinking about it. And I'm really? I feel that way too. I'm you're right.
Were you
and then
I was
wow. And then I started thinking, I said, I ain't never seen no black Jews. I was like, hold on.
Hold up, wait a minute.
I was like, is that even a thing? I was like, he'd be black and Jews. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. I seen them in black, but I never seen black ones. So I'm like, hold on, what? Hold on, wait. We got to figure this out. So I start looking into. I find Ethiopian Jews and everything else, and I'm like, okay, so we wouldn't be the only people. I'm telling you, not the precision of God. And so, it all worked out that my brother and sister-in-law, they were having the same thing. Everybody was coming to us at the same time. So we're all together.
You call it your coming to Moses moment.
Coming to Moses. Yeah. Right. We had this coming to Moses. And so now my wife's not moving as fast as me, but we're journeying. Yeah. There was a Erev Shabbat,
which was the
eve of the Sabbath. I have on my yarmulke, I have on my tzitzit, and I'm checking through the self-checkout.
Yeah.
And it was a bright light went off. It didn't actually, but it felt like it. And I heard, Shabbat Shalom, brother. And I turned around. It's a black Jew. And he's standing in the thing. He's 6'3". He's got karate outfit, but I look past it. Right. Yarmulke on, and I go over to talk to him. He introduces. He says his name is Yaakov London. I meet him, and we're talking, and we can't get enough of each other. Just talking, and we vibe. And he told me where he lived. He lived in the same neighborhood.
Hug? I feel like
it was he didn't understand or whatever. When I told him what's so interesting about it, the whole way it works out is amazing. So anyway, he invites me for Shabbat. Me and my wife go for Shabbat.
Wow.
And then we go back the next week.
Wow.
And then before you know it, we're
where are they now?
Where are they in? Are
they still there?
So what's interesting is we end up, I think it was 2 years after we left, they ended up making Aliyah. So now they live here in Jerusalem.
Oh, good.
Actually.
Okay. So you can still get together for Shabbat.
We still get together for Shabbat every once in a while.
Does anyone say to you, who's watching you, your friends, your family, yourself, that you're kind of religion hopping? Yeah. You're going Muslim, then you're going Christian, then Messianic, Jews, and then Orthodox, observant, authentic Judaism. But it's kind of what's going to be next, Nissim?
Right.
How long is this one going to hold?
The sentiment was that, I think, in the beginning, because, like I said, you're a truth seeker, so you leave never satisfied, right? So you're searching. And for me, I did a lot of soul searching until you find truth. I think in the beginning, everybody was just sort of okay, he's going to phase. And then it's hold on, he didn't come around. We don't talk to, and it wasn't, and I always tell people, I wasn't running away. I was running 2.
Right.
The fire that I had for God was just unparalleled. Like that whole period of time that I was hosting these Bible studies and all that, I was doing 3-day water fast and praying, spending hours with God, praying and crying, because my whole world is being turned upside down. Yeah. Everything I thought to be true, this religion that had kept me out of trouble all these years and all this other stuff like that, I'm finding this flaw and this thing and that, whatever. So I started praying and fasting for periods of time like that. So we were so spiritually charged, even on our way going into Judaism. And so after we had, at this point, met Rabbi Skobach, my wife and I are now considering serious conversion, met Yaakov. We've been in the community now in my childhood neighborhood, right, that I grew up in. And now I'm going, I think first thing I went was for Rosh Hashanah, for the New Year. And I had a beautiful experience there. And then that Simchat Torah, I went by myself, me and my brother-in-law. Right. And then that Simchat Torah, I went, and my wife came with me, and she was like, wow, this is amazing. It's the best time to bring somebody considering Judaism.
That is the party of the year, totally.
It's like the party of the year. It's like,
totally.
Jews know how to party, right?
That important.
That important.
Yes.
Purim also. But just say that's probably my wife's least favorite holiday. Too many people
all
have a
the
little
women.
bit too
It's
much.
all the mothers' least favorite. All we do. Well, by the way, I mean, that's where we pray the most.
That's
and connect to God the most. And yes.
You definitely need a lot of prayers on Purim. And so anyway, so she's like, okay, I'm sold. We need to figure out what we're going to do. So I'm now going on the weekdays and I'm trying to talk to the rabbi and he just say, I'm like, Rabbi, I'm like, he's
I'm
like,
ready.
Yeah, we'll talk. Uh-huh. And I'm like, okay, how do I get to tell the rabbi whatever? I was just like, take your time, keep trying. And so
he's pushing
eventually,
you away because we're really not a religion that's looking for converts. Judaism, and we don't proselytize, and we don't have missionaries out there other than a very unique, interesting angle that you told me. And really, we push away because there are the 7 Noahide laws, the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, as we say in Hebrew. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a Jew to have your place in heaven.
Right, exactly. And so and even on the flip side, by making you a Jew, I'm obligating you to more.
Right, exactly.
Right? So nobody's rushing to convert people.
7, as opposed to 613.
Right. A lot of
mitzvot.
Most people will opt for the 7.
Yeah.
But I was on fire. I was heavenly charged by all the information I was learning, and I knew where I was holding. And so eventually the rabbi pulled me into his office and he asked me, he says, where do you live? It's Rabbi Benzikin. Rabbi Simon Benzikin. He's amazing from Seattle. He took us in.
I feel like I have a lot of great rabbis over there. What's happening?
I was so fortunate. And he comes and he takes me into the office and he asked me, where do you live? I told him I lived in such and such place outside the neighborhood. And then he tells me, he says, okay, when you live in the neighborhood, then we'll talk. Bye. It's like, okay, now we know what property is like in a Jewish neighborhood.
Well, maybe not everyone watching knows. It's like 100% higher than anywhere else.
Yes, it's like, so when you live in the neighborhood, then we'll talk. Okay.
Correct.
So,
which, by the way, could be a good deterrent if you're trying to push someone away.
It should be, but within 2 weeks, we were living in the neighborhood. After some time, we went to the court of rabbis that you have to go to get approval. So much easier in Christianity, Islam. You just say some stuff and you're good. Judaism is a long process, and you have to sit before these rabbis, and we go in. And they're, asking us questions to vet us and whatever. And we go in. It was me and my wife first. And my brother and sister-in-law was scheduled for the next month. They only did these. That was another reason why it took so long. They only did one meeting per month, that they would have. And so they were the next meeting the next month. So we went in, had a beautiful conversation with the rabbis. And then something happened with the kosher department, and the rabbis that oversee the kosher had to meet, which are the same rabbis. They had to have an emergency meeting a few days later. So the person who was the secretary was like, well, we might as well just do the next family at the same time. Let's get it all different when it was my brother and sister-in-law. Was my brother and sister-in-law.
So connected.
And so, after they go in, And then they come back. The rabbi told us, says, it's going to be 2 separate families. So by this time we had already moved. Yeah. So it was 2 years later. So me and my wife had moved into a different place. So we weren't living in the same place because the rabbi told us, so you're 2 separate families. There'd be an issue with if one family's Jewish, the other, and you're living in a house or whatever. You guys should separate. So we did. So when we went to the rabbis, we went as 2 different couples. So the rabbi called us back after my brother and sister-in-law went in, and he said that the Av Beit Din, the main rabbi of the court, said he loved both families so much. He says he wants to do you both together. And I'm thinking, house rabbi, you know how much money I could have saved if we would have just stayed the same.
Come on,
right? Like, and so a few months later, both me and my wife and my brother and sister-in-law do our conversion, and I think it was a week later, we had a double wedding, same day. So interesting, literally 3 days ago,
chills.
My brother-in-law sends me our invitation for our wedding. And I'm like, it had both names on there, because it was a double wedding. So it had me and my wife, him and his wife. And I'm like looking at this, and he's got pictures. He's like, oh, you got to send me this. And this was just like a few days ago. And I'm like, wow,
And we didn't even hear one thing for a long time about your music. It's like, this is your thing. And it's like your second generation rapper. And you had this almost had this massive record deal, and you're known, and you're like, what happened to it?
So, music was my life. And I knew I always wanted to do it. At around 19 is when I got this offer from I think it was a company at Universal, Virgin Records, and it looked like this deal was going. It was very big at that time. I was like, wow, And I didn't know at this time they were really looking for. It's so crazy about how this happened. They were really looking for. It was at that place of like. I don't know why so many years later. It was like that thing where they wanted, since 50 Cent was so big at this time, he was like huge. And they wanted sort of like that same street role, but they were looking for like the next Biggie Smalls. And I was big, I was even bigger than what I am now. And so they really wanted that persona, and I wasn't interested until, it was a big offer. So I started making the songs. I didn't end up with the deal, but I started making the songs, and after they had pulled out, they ended up signing this other guy. His name was Gorilla Black. So Damian Black, it was Gorilla Black. So they ended up taking him. He was like such a copy paste of Biggie Smalls. He didn't really take off that well. Yeah, so I was like, that's what you guys get. That's what you guys get. And I had other interests from Slim Shady Records at that time, and Atlantic Records. It was, and then
so this is like an exciting time.
It was an exciting time, and it was tough because it was like that period. I just lost my mother, and I was in New York, and I'm meeting with like Dame Dash's team, and Clark Kent. I was with Clark Kent for like 2 days in a row. He really wanted to sign. He was the president of DDMG. It was Dame Dash Music Group, and this is. Dame Dash and Jay-Z were partners. They had a cable. So after they had split, Dame Dash started his own thing. Clark Kent, who discovered Biggie Smalls and Jay-Z, was like
all your
drooling over
dreams
my
are coming
music.
true,
It's like everything's here. And as I'm going closer and closer to Judaism, and now I'm reading about humility and those character traits and all these other things, like that just not meshing with my hip hop life. It was a two different worlds, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work.
Now, at some point, I was working at HBO on The Sopranos.
Okay,
and I become a religious woman, and I'm not like working for Nickelodeon, you know what I'm saying? Like that Cartoon Network, and I was like, this is not meshing with my spiritual journey. So I totally understand what you're saying.
Totally. So what happened is I ended up now having this great independent, career that I had, but now I'm spiritually going, and I can't make these two worlds work. So I say,
it's like hard to reconcile the two.
It's very hard. Yeah. It's so hard because even in rap, I say, even if it's positive, you're at least rapping about how much better you are than someone else, right? That's like the most,
which is not the best character trait. If we're talking about refining our character traits from a Jewish lens, I'm so amazing is definitely not one of the things you want to be screaming.
And so I couldn't make it work in my head, and my heart was just, I was yearning for closeness to God. So I went through this period of like anything I felt was getting in the way of my relationship with God. Anything that I felt was a threat to having, to me loving it more than God. I eliminated it out of my
Wow.
life. So first thing was
Are you scared that's going to make you feel regretful?
What this reset was good for me for was that I thought I was retiring, right? I did a whole retirement album. That album blew up. I ended up on MTV Beat, and it's like, and I'm just now hitting all those benchmarks I wanted to hit. I was in New York with, Little Brother Fonte. I was in with, other rappers that I grew up listening to, and they're like introducing themselves to me. They know my name. Like at this point, I was beating out Jay-Z, Mos Def on the CMJ's College Music Journal. Like you're
like somebody.
But all throughout all of this, I was burning for God, and I was always feeling like this is so like. I always thought that when I got here, I'd feel like on top of the world, and I felt out of place. I was like, this ain't my place.
So you retired for how many years from music?
So I retired for about 3 years, I thought. It was 3 years. 3.5 years. So that was 2009. So I came back out with an official album, I think in 2013 or something like that. So 3 years, 4 years, 3.5 years. So what happens is I think I'm good. I'm done, whatever. And it's getting close to like, my conversion. And so like, I'm even more laser focused. I'm even more like, I can't, it wasn't out of thought, out of mind.
Right.
People in the community started to find out who I was, right? And they're like, dude, you're like so talented. Why don't you make music? I'm like, no, not happening.
Right.
And I was able to push people off. That was the old me. Yeah. I'm the new me. That's who I used to be. It was okay until my wife started telling me. And that's when I was just like, come on. And so now I'm back.
Well, she's like, you have to make music. You should start making music. And now, we're in a better place now. And I'm like, no. And my brother-in-law, who's also my producer, he makes, most of my biggest hits he produced. So he's like, yeah, maybe we should start making tunes again, man. Like we should. And I'm like, no. And in the midst of all of this, and I'm not like to say anyway, Matisyahu has his public wrestling with his Judaism this same year. And I'm like, that was like painful to watch.
Told you guys, I'm not doing it because I don't want to. And I'm like,
and that was painful to watch, by the way.
It was painful. It was painful for everybody to watch because, I ended up meeting Modest that year, and I was like, man, this is hard. This is hard to be in this type of life and whatever. And I thought I knew up at that point. I was like, wow, this is really hard. And then so that kind of had already softened me a little bit, at least towards him. But I was still like, I ain't doing it. My son gets sick a few weeks later, and he's got meningitis, and we didn't know what was going on. We kept going back and forth. He had a fever or whatever, and then my wife, I don't know, she's like looks up WebMD, something online. She did her own research, and she's like forced the doctors to do a spinal tap.
Wow.
That's how we found out it was meningitis. It was because of my wife.
Wow.
And so now she's in the hospital a couple of weeks. And I was reading by this time the books of Rabbi Arush. I was very close to his books.
Yes.
And he spoke specifically that if you ever need a big salvation, you should pray and try to talk to God for 6 hours straight with your heart. Like cut yourself off 6 hours and go and give God your time. And I'm like, yeah, right. And that happened. I was like, I'm trying anything, right? And I prayed, and I was about 5 hours in. And I didn't know how much I had to say to God until that happened. And I'm like, my son's in the hospital. He's fighting for his life. My wife is there. And I'm at home with my eldest daughter. And in the midst of it, I remembered my dream when I was 17. That dream comes back to me clear. And I start crying again. And I'm like, whoa, it was so powerful. And I had a broken microphone. There's a Rode NT2. It didn't work. And I still kept it. It was a nice body. It looked like this I don't want to geek out on you, but it looked like a U87 mic. So I always kept it because I was a gear junkie no matter what I was doing in my life. I always liked gear. So I hooked this microphone up, dusted off my whole stuff, and it worked after I prayed. And I was like, never mind, God, it works already. No.
Like, I don't need the parking spot. I got it. Thank you.
I got it.
Yeah.
So I went to my rabbi. By this time, I was very close to Rabbi Shmuel Brody in Seattle.
Yeah, a lot of rabbi friends.
Yeah, I do. And Rabbi Brody,
good friends to have.
Rabbi Brody for me was so instrumental in my life at that point to see somebody love God. He reminded me because you come into the community and you start learning and you're on fire, and everybody's like been doing this for a long time, so they have nowhere near the excitement for Judaism as you have, and you're like and he had still that youthful excitement for Judaism. As a person that loved God, and it was contagious. So me and my brother-in-law naturally gravitated towards him. So he became like my rabbi, my Rebbe, And I remember talking to him about what I was going through, and he maybe gave me a 2-hour lecture, or maybe the minimum 2 hours. It was like, the Path of the Just book, like straight down your throat. In a good way. And then,
in the kindest, nicest way. The most pleasant way.
He's very pleasant. But at the end of it, he gave me a blessing. He says, this should be a good thing for you. And I tiptoed back into music, and I got a call from a friend, and he said, have you ever heard of this song, Hashem Melech? I was like, yeah, I heard this Hashem Melech. He said, yeah, God Elbaz. I said, yeah, I heard this song. It was like the hit of that summer, right? And this is already wintertime now. That summer, everybody had played that song. And then he said, would you do a remix? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do a remix. He said, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Named Elon Cohen. So he calls the God Elbaz, talks to him. God says, all right, let's do it. I don't know how he sent him my music.
And like God G-A-D, not like G-O-D.
Not G-O-D.
Just like from the beginning.
God Elbaz, right? So now, how did Elon find me? Very interesting. Elon found me because about a week apart from each other, we both had the #1 articles of our life story on Aish.com.
Wow.
Nehemiah Cooper-Smith had hooked me up. I think it was with, what's his name? Tzvi. He's in Boston.
Rabbi Nehemiah Cooper-Smith is the founder and editor-in-chief of Aish.com for the last 25 years.
Right.
Unbelievable.
2,500 years maybe. Okay, so...
He looks much younger than that.
Yeah. Didn't look a day over 17. Anyway, so
wow.
Somebody had pitched my story to Aish. I think it was my brother-in-law. And they did this article. So that's like the biggest buzz. It becomes the #1 artist, like Black Jewish gangster becomes Jewish. Something crazy. Something like that.
You know how to write a headline.
Know how to write a headline. So, and meanwhile, Elon's story starts trending also because he was working at Atlantic Records, found some girl that he wanted to sign to the record label. Before he did the deal, he goes on a birthright trip and he's like, I'm not coming back. And the girl happens to be Lady Gaga today. So that story's on. So our stories
some girl,
right?
Yeah.
So our stories are trending. He finds out, he listens to my music. He reaches out to me. We start talking, whatever. Then he calls me about this Hashem Melech song. Will you do this with God? God says, yes, let's do it. He sent them whatever music. So they send me the files. I do it. And for the first time, because I put out a positive album, I talked a little bit about God, but it's like a song called Hashem Melech. God is King.
Yeah.
What else am I talking about?
Yeah.
So I poured my
You're
heart
all
on
in.
it. And we ended up putting the song out maybe 6 months later. It was a massive success. It hit #3 on like the world charts.
On the world charts. We're not even just talking about the Jewish world.
Right? No, this song blew up, and that's when I knew. I was like, okay, God,
you're back.
It's not that to do it, but you're saying to do it for you. Yeah. Make sure that your name is front and center. And when I realized that, I've been running ever since.
You'll correct me if it's a year ago or a few years ago, because you performed on this roof a ton. You're a great friend of Aish.
Yeah. Love Aish.
And like one time, I don't know, before a show, after a concert that you did here on the roof, you said like HBO had optioned your show, a show about your life.
Yeah.
You're writing a Broadway musical.
Right.
And I'm like waiting and waiting. What happened to all these things?
Okay, so this is also, I've never said this publicly.
You heard it here first, everyone. This is what happens in No Reservations.
First. This is completely, I don't know, you worked it. I don't know, you got this stuff out of me.
I've got extra spiritual powers here and godly assistance on this interview.
It is. It's wonderful. So there was a few different people that reached out to me for my story over the years. First was Queen Latifah. She had a deal with Netflix at the time. And then there was another company, I can forget the production company that was associated with Netflix. And they were drama. Queen Latifah wanted a documentary. And then HBO approached me, Sally Richardson, HBO approached me about doing a show. She said she didn't know what, she said, but she had an overall at HBO at the time. And we did the deal. Everything went through, and
And you're like, finally, after so many things, I'm going to say, going all the way back that have fallen through for you, this has to be like, we made it.
So I'm writing that. And then that starts going in a direction that I was not comfortable with. And then I was on the phone with Sally and with Moshe, and we were talking about the episodes, and we had this conflict. The conflict was that...
Is it a comedy? Is it a drama?
It was like drama comedy, and that's fine. Me and Moshe had to do a lot of, arguing, in a Talmudic type of way of going back and forth about getting the script, because I'm very religious, he's secular, and so we had a lot of back and forth. So I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. We'll try to make it work. I had a rabbi that I was checking everything with, and I start to see that the musical's not going the way that I want. And then the problem that we had with the TV series was that, okay, we want you to be you, but your wife can't be your wife. We need a Tiffany Haddish. We need someone else. And I'm like, well, how am I going to make that work? How am I going to be me and then have somebody else to be my wife? Like, it's,
you mean you to be you, as in you're the actor who plays yourself,
I'm playing
but
myself,
now they want you to play opposite a woman who's not your wife.
But they also have like a woman that's not my wife.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. So then we finally come to terms with the fact that, okay, I'm not going to be me also. I'll EP it, I'll oversee it, and we'll get somebody else to be me. But I need an actor to be me. And I was up on my roof one day, and I'm looking at this. The Broadway thing is going that way. It's not really going, the content of it. I was like, do I really want to be associated with such a thing? It's not really going the direction of something that I would feel good having my name attached to morally. And I was standing up, and I looked up to the sky. That's where I go and meet with God, on my roof.
To try to get to the closest point.
Get the closest point. I get my clarity up there. And I looked up and I said, God, I've been so close so many times in my life to that big break, so many different times. And I realized for myself that in the nick of time, you always pull those things back away from me, those opportunities or whatever. And I said that the biggest moments that I had in my life was like that Melech, where it was about you and everybody knew it was about you. I wasn't hiding it. I wasn't, tucking my Judaism or my relationship with you. That wasn't, and I realized that from that, I said that a part of my mission, I knew part of my mission was to, spread God's light and all these other things. But when I really thought about it, the word kept popping in my head, the Fehesia, meaning out in the open, be public with who you are, be public. That's the way. Some people have a job in this world to spread God's light in a hidden way. And I felt very much so God was saying, that's not you though. That's not you. So I sat there and I was going, I said, God, this became my prayer every day. Anything that is in my life that I'm working on, any of these projects, anything that is not going to be a part of my mission, that does not glorify you openly, take it away. I started praying that. I said, take it away from me.
I cannot believe you prayed for that.
I prayed for it. I prayed hard and hard. I prayed for it.
Did you say to take it away because you felt that you couldn't on your own cut it off?
I felt like I couldn't cut it off on my own because on one level, I didn't have the power. I was in a little bit too deep. I've already been paid by both of them. Right. And, major risk of you being the person that backs out of the deal as opposed to where if something else happens to make the deal not go away. They both have paid me already, right? I've already got, my first, installments from Warner and from whatever. And I'm like, what do I do? So I start praying. Two things happen. The play has some issue. The guy goes AWOL on everybody and then just like totally shuts the whole thing down. And he shuts it down. And I'm like, wow, God. And I felt so relieved, like, I have to do it. A couple weeks later, I get a call. Writers are going on strike in Hollywood. This is a Writers Guild locker. You can't talk to the writers. I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, God's like, and I'm like...
By the way, and he's turning the world over. It's not like just one writer, whatever. Yeah, it's the whole industry. The whole industry goes on.
And I'm like, whoa. So that writer's strike went on for a long time. Almost a year or so, whatever the case is. By the time they come back, the studios lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But we survived up until this point. We have survived. Our show survived. They didn't cancel it. And then they come back for their money and they're like, okay, a couple weeks later, October 7th happens. The show was supposed to be a comedy based on my life of me living in Israel, right? That was the comedy, that fish out of water story in Israel. They cannot do a show in Israel anymore. And they called me and told me, like, listen, you have a non-relocation clause in your contract. We'd like to do the show in New York. Ball's in your court. Whatever you want to do is what we're doing. I said, I'm out. I'm out.
Wow.
I said, yeah, I'm out. And that was the way that ended. And so after that, it became clear to me. I guess it was clear to my wife much earlier than it was for me. Women have that level of understanding, you know. She had the intuition.
Yes.
And I realized, I said, you know what? Like, anytime I've tried to go with these entities because it's going to make me bigger, it's going to catapult the fortune, it's going to make my career bigger and all this other, I never had success. When was my success? Is when I gave it all to God and I made it all about him. And then Hashem says, boom, I'm going to platform you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to platform you. So I said, listen, any of these places I go to, I tell my story, I'm going to have to compromise and all that. I said, I'm going to do my own story.
Yeah.
And I know it's something because everybody's come after me for it. So I know I got something, right? And I could tell it in my own way, in their own. So I started on my own now, my own, you know, journey of building and my own platform to tell my story or whatever. And that's really what I did. I started podcasting also too recently. That sort of has taken over my life. Yeah. And in the midst of wanting to tell my story, I got heavily excited about film and making stories and all that. So that's sort of where I moved to.
God, in a post-October 7th world, you're making a lot of content and commenting a ton on the headlines, Kanye West, the Drake and Mark Hendrick feud. You're talking about political headlines that's happening with Israel and the war. And So, okay, on one thing, on one hand, I feel like, do you feel like you're pivoting a little, you're becoming a new you, and are people receiving that pivot? Because I had a very similar thing in that, like, I was very known for food, and now I'm like, well, I want to do something more meaningful. And I want to be involved in Jewish wisdom and spreading, you know, God and his divine Torah, which is the guidebook for life, to the world.
October 7th happened, as you mentioned. I couldn't record music anymore. And I'm being honest with you right now, Jamie, I have not recorded a song since October 7th. I have not.
You would think something like that opens up your soul.
It didn't. I was scrambling to just talk to the Jewish people. I grabbed my camera and I started saying inspirational things, and people were responding to it. And the stuff started going viral. And so I felt like, I said, wow, God, I can say this. And then after a while, stopped. I felt like I was falling on deaf ears. The world became way too crazy anti-Semitic. Yeah. I'm seeing things happening all over and I'm starting to think like, man, why is everybody fighting? We need to let's get back to and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start a podcast and I'm gonna just, talk until people hear me. And I'm putting out the podcast and people are, enjoying it and different things like that. And but at the same time, I have this like thing in me, like, this just happened. I really want to talk about it. Right. No, I'm going to talk about God. I'm
Once
just
only
going to
talk about this. Influence space is something. Every single headline or event or tweet, or I'm going to go DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. You got to turn on your camera.
I got perspectives. Yeah. I got perspectives, and I want to say these things that I think I'm offering a God-focused way on how to see these perspectives. And I'm like, I'm going to say it. And no, I'm forcing myself at this point. It's crazy to only talk about the spiritual items that reflect to me. And I start to think like, and then one thing happened recently, in the recent time since this all happened. Yeah. We lost the Bieber's kids and the wife. And I made a video about it. And I was going to do a whole podcasting, and I made a video about it. Because it was from my heart. That's just what I felt at that time. And it wasn't long or anything like that. And I put on my channel and it starts to go viral. And then I'm like,
what do you think it is that you said that made it go viral? Because everyone was talking
Everybody
about
was talking about it.
We were captivated by this story.
It hurt.
And we waited with bated breath
Hmm.
to even confirm that
Right.
they
That it
were
was,
coming back in a
I didn't
coffin.
accept it until it was complete. I just couldn't accept it. I think what happened was, and I saw something recently, the second time this had just happened recently was with Charlie Kirk. Not connected, but I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I immediately took my raw emotion and I started talking about it. And I seen that people started to take to it. And I said, well, hold on. And so my first thing was like, I'm speaking from my heart. I'm not doing nothing. I'm not doing nothing for clicks. I'm not doing none of that. Because I already know what happens. That dopamine, you start to follow that.
It's not
And I
very
don't remember
healthy.
what I had read, Rabbi Cook or something like that and whatever. And he started to say that once you see the world, I think it was Rabbi Cook, and I'm paraphrasing, that once you start to see a world going in a particular way, you don't fight it. God's over there somewhere, and he's trying to communicate something to the world. You have to be in, basically, if I think he was talking about the arts and different things. It's like, the at that time, in his time, the religious was fighting against it. It's like, no. There's a reason why the world is gravitating to this form of art or this form of music, right? And we need to figure out how to be over there because that's a God energy. And so I started to think about this, and I'm like, well, listen, hold on. If I just say what I feel about all these different things that are happening, Candace Owens and all this other, because I was hurt by Candace. I was a big fan of hers at one point. So I started she was fighting for the Jewish people, at least on that front. Yeah. And then when that changed, and I was so devastated. I was a big fan of Kanye West. I was literally talking the day before the DEFCON 3 called me and my brother-in-law was having a praise Kanye day for the music that he had before, how much it influenced us. And it really, honestly, as crazy as Kanye was, he really helped me be that bridge out of listening to gangster rap. Really, because that wasn't who he was. He wasn't talking about, healing the world, but it was still at least took me off of that. I started to look at music differently because of Kanye.
And he also went in a very God-centric
way
direction.
And that's where
some of the gospel choir and the Sunday, he really brought that
Yeah, he really
forefront.
brought that out. And I was like, wow. And that was encouraging, even though it's not our religion, but it was encouraging. We love to see people love God.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Especially someone who came from something
where
similar,
he came from.
Exactly, and what he used to rap about. So what do you feel about him now?
So I think the man's just a nutbag. I think he needs medication. And when he's on it, he's okay. When he's not on it, he's not. He recently went to Rabbi Pinto.
Yeah, what did you think about?
And I covered that immediately. The moment it came out, I went I'm talking about it.
So you feel like it's a sincere apology?
I believed he was sincere in the moment. I think if you take away the medicine, he's not sincere. And I think, not saying that he's not sincere, but I think he has these flip out moments. Just watching over the years. For many years, I've been watching Kanye. I was attached to him as he was one of my favorite artists. So he has these flip out moments. What would make that real to me is if Hell Hitler comes off of YouTube, comes off of Spotify, that's what will make it real to me. If the benefit that he was making from that, and I think that he was a major force behind a lot of the anti-Semitic things that the DEFCON 3 led to a wave of anti-Semitism.
I feel like he just allowed the anti-Semitism to come out of the closet.
It became cool. He made it look cool.
Yeah.
And that's part of what he's done over the years. He's a trendsetter.
Yes.
So once he does something, he makes something look cool. And I think a lot of people hopped onto it. And we lost, commentators and other people that were actually supporters of Israel. And so for me, I started to see that, and I started to see how it started to affect Christians and have a large Christian audience also. I was like, I got to speak about these things. I need to give biblical perspective on current events, on how to see these things from a godly perspective. And that's what really got me started on the podcast. And I'm I came to one point, and I'm telling you, this was it. Because I couldn't, it's hard to transition to some degree, when you know that you already, in this, I know what I'm doing. I know this, music, the back of my head, and I'm I can't really be living. I haven't left it. It's in my heart, but it's not what it used to be. And I was one day, and I came to grips, and I said, God, wherever you need me, that's where I want to be. Wherever you need me. So
that's where you are.
That's where I am.
And apparently you wanted to hear today and tell this story.
Oh my goodness. No, I've been getting calls. We've been here for like seven hours, but I've enjoyed every second of it. I really appreciate it. And the fish is even good.
Right, okay, now we can keep eating. Nissim, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, amazing.
This is like a 7-hour podcast.
Yeah, but we're hungry again. We started at lunch and now we're at dinner. Or we started at dinner, now we're at breakfast. Oh, this works as breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like smoked salmon, that's what I'm saying.
It does work as breakfast.
That was the first episode of No Reservations. And what you just heard wasn't just a testimony. It was a masterclass in resilience, in reinvention, in the relentless pursuit of truth, no matter the cost. Now, Nissim's story teaches us something profound. The path of life is rarely straight. It's marked by loss and love, by mistakes and miracles, by moments when everything falls apart and somehow magically falls right back into place. Nissim grew up surrounded by chaos, but he wasn't defined by it. He lost his mother to addiction, but he didn't lose himself to bitterness. He walked away from fame, but he walked towards something far, far greater. What strikes me most about Nissim's story is his honesty. He didn't pretend the journey was easy. He showed us the raw, unfiltered tears and truth of what it means to transform your entire life. And in doing so, he gave us permission to walk away from what no longer serves us, even when the world simply doesn't understand. Now, Nissim didn't just convert to Judaism. He converted his pain into purpose, his music into a mission, and his past into a platform that reaches millions. And now, as a father, a husband, an artist, and an activist, he stands as living proof that no matter where you come from, you can rewrite your story. You've got this. We've got this. All right, if you liked this first episode of No Reservations, if this conversation sparked something inside of you, then please like, subscribe, comment, and share this episode. Your support means the world. From the bottom of my heart, I'm thanking you in advance for making sure that the world gets to hear these stories because you've shared it around. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Thank you for joining us with no fear, no filters, and no reservations. This was Nissim Black.